at 9:30 on the dot. No one's getting in my way. But things are quickly thrown off. The news this week, a decision is made on the other side of the world. Fuel prices go up. Interest rate hike. Suddenly your plans change. Our way has been disturbed. And if we're honest, that's often our first thought, isn't it? How does this affect me? Of course, for others, we think of where, and the disturbance is much greater. But the headlines here, RBA, our way is hit. How does this affect me? We build our lives in a certain way, and we don't like it being disrupted. But can I suggest life in this world is disturbed? Many of you have had to suffer through the retelling of the Jonas dishwasher saga. You've been very patient in your listening. It wasn't a big deal. It was not exciting, but it disturbed us. It doesn't take long before something comes up that throws things out. And often it's much bigger than that. Not just inconvenience, but events that really make you think about what matters. A decision at work. Someone really lets you down in terms of where you thought things were going. Or a relationship where your priorities are exposed. Or a moment that you thought you were building your life on and it starts to feel shaky. And suddenly it's not just your plans that are disturbed, it's your sense of what's important, what you're living for, what really matters. The kind of disturbance that doesn't just interrupt your life, it begins to make you question the way you're living altogether. And it's that kind of disturbance we see today in our passage of what we've just read in the book of Acts. This book of Acts, it's the history of the church, the beginning of the church after Jesus' time in the world. And when the message of Jesus comes to Ephesus, this city, it didn't just affect a few individuals. The whole city was turned upside down. Look at verse 23 from the passage we just read. About that time, there arose a great disturbance about the way. Well, the time is AD 55, about 20 years after Jesus' life on earth. It's the yellow triangle there on the timeline. And we're in a real city on the coast, the west coast of modern Turkey. And Ephesus was a thriving city, a major port city, a commercial hub, a center of influence in the Roman world. But it wasn't just about business. Ephesus was a city that was deeply religious. At the heart of the city stood the temple of Artemis, and it was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. It was 4 times the size of the Parthenon. We saw when the gospel went to Athens, the Parthenon, huge marble columns, Artemis temple, 4 times that. She was a goddess of fertility, trusted in Ephesus for life and blessing and prosperity. The whole identity of Ephesus circled around this temple and Artemis, its worship, its pride, even its economy. You can imagine there's a whole industry around this Artemis, tourism, trade, souvenirs. Things were ticking along nicely in Ephesus. until the gospel of Jesus arrived. Now, very important, notice the name for Christianity that's used in this passage. What's Christianity called here? It's not Christianity, it's called the Way. And that was the original name before Christianity was called Christianity. It was called the Way. That was the original name, what it started to be known as. Why? Well, Jesus didn't just come offering helpful advice for life. He came claiming to be the way to God. Remember, Jesus said in his life, famous verses, John 14, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. It's not a way he's talking about. It's not one way, the way. He's explicit. There's no other way to God except through me, he says. Jesus claimed forgiveness with God is only available through his sacrifice. You can see why this would upset the apple cart. Jesus says, if you're going any other way, it's the wrong way. Turn back. And Ephesus already had its way, and they were pretty happy. Its worship, its economy, its identity. They were fine. And now this new message arrives in town. That's not the way. And the balance of things in Ephesus starts to shift. Last week we read that Paul, the Christian leader and teacher of the gospel, was there for 2 years teaching and explaining about Jesus. And it was starting to get traction. We saw last week dramatically, there was a huge bonfire in Ephesus. The smoke was going up as people burned their magic scrolls. They came together and burnt the scrolls, these magic tokens they once relied on, up in smoke. People walking away dramatically from an old life. And this week in Ephesus, the pressure starts to build. We see 3 pressure points, I think, in our passage. This is Acts 19. They're on the outline, so you can follow along there. 3 points. Disturbance of the way. So first, it was disturbing market forces in Ephesus. The way works on the economy. Meet Demetrius, silversmith. He's an honest worker, working with his hands. He makes silver shrines in Ephesus, and it's a roaring trade. See, people would come to Ephesus. They would buy their little shrine in the street. They'd take it to the temple to be blessed, and then bring it home and give it great significance in their household and in their lives. Demetrius goes into his workshop one Monday morning, and the little table at the front is full of the normal with idols. And by the end of the day, the table's full. Something's out of whack. Demetrius saw the smoke from the scroll fire a few weeks back. Some of his regular customers haven't returned. And instead of the usual catch cry, "Great is Artemis," in the town, he's hearing more and more this name of Jesus. And people are talking about this word Lord. His mate, Diodorus, that was the best name I could make up. Diodorus was the engraver 2 drawers down from Demetrius. And he's noticed something's off as well. All the trades are suffering. Metal suppliers, store holders. Word is spreading throughout the guilds. And Demetrius calls a union meeting. He says, "You know, my friends, that we receive a good income from this business." And then he says something very revealing. Verse 26. "This fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus and in practically the whole province of Asia." He says that gods made by human hands are no gods at all. Just pause there. See, what Demetrius heard Paul saying wasn't that ridiculous of an idea, was it? If you make something with your own hands, can it really be a god? Demetrius, of all people, should know that. Remember Paul's recent speech when he was in Athens. He saw the many idols in that city, and he boldly declared, "The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man." Why should he? Nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything. If God made you, isn't it absurd to think you can make God? And yet that's what we do. Demetrius doesn't really stop to think about that, because the issue for him isn't really what's true, it's what it's going to cost him. Verse 27, "There is danger," he says to the meeting. "Our trade will lose its good name." The people are being led astray from our way, he says. Our income, our way of life, our reputation. We can't let this be disturbed. Here's the real problem. Not that the message makes no sense, but it threatens everything he's built his life on. Now, just for a moment, fast forward 2,000 years, because isn't this really where the Jesus way touches our society and would disturb Sydney? Such riches and such desire for wealth. We may not all have a silver figure on our bookshelf, but Sydney-siders build our lives around income, security, lifestyle, the good life, a good job, stable future, nice place to live, comfort, options, freedom. These become the things that all of life revolves around. Surely we see it, don't we? Evidence of this in how busy everyone is. Do you ever stop to consider, how is it possible we are so rich, yet so busy? Isn't it deeply connected to our collective need for more? And then the message of Jesus comes along. And Jesus calls you to become like him, to die to yourself and your own life, to die for the sake of others, because he died for us. And he calls us to put others first, using everything you have for the sake of them, making decisions that will cost you. And suddenly Christianity is not just an interesting idea anymore, it's a threat. Not because it makes no sense, but because of what it might do to your way of life. Do we understand Demetrius and his disturbance? Well, back to Ephesus and the second disruption that Demetrius points to. I feel this one's maybe less personal to him, but he knows it will get traction. Verse 27. There's danger, he says, to the union meeting. There's danger not only that our trade will lose its good name, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be discredited. And the goddess herself, who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the world, will be robbed of her divine majesty. Now, whether or not Demetrius believed all that, He knew this. Artemis was part of the furniture of Ephesus. She was everywhere. The identity of the city, the way things are. And here's what he's absolutely right about. Allegiance to one God discredits another. If people turn and follow this Jesus way, Artemis becomes irrelevant, insignificant, unimportant. Again, to put it in economic terms, if Artemis' share goes down, others will lose confidence and sell, and the whole thing will plummet. The Demetrius uses powerful and emotive language here. She will be robbed of her divine majesty. But notice what he's not doing. He's not actually trying to prove that Artemis is divine. He's not offering arguments. He's not giving evidence. He's just appealing to the way things are. And that's a powerful thing. The status quo, our traditions, our culture, our shared identity. This is who we are. We're Artemis people. And this is what we've always done. This is our God. If Artemis is unseated in Ephesus, the whole place changes, as we've started to see. See, we don't just live our way. We live a shared, collective way. Our community shapes us more than we realize. What everyone around you treats as normal starts to feel normal to you. Historically in Sydney, over the centuries, Christians have fought for workers' rights and for rest. Christians fought for the most needy and poor to have a day off in the week. The shops never used to open on Sunday. And now we think, how could you live with that? See, what everyone else values, you begin to value. What everyone assumes is true, you rarely stop to question. Why am I so busy? Well, everyone's busy. And when the shared way is challenged, it doesn't just feel like my way is being questioned, it feels the whole world is being shaken. And that's exactly where it leads in Ephesus. What starts with Demetrius spreads to the whole city. Verse 28. When they heard this, they were furious and began shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" Soon the whole city was in uproar. What begun as a union meeting in the town square has snowballs. This is now a citywide riot. And this is the power of the crowd, of collective identity. And there's not much logic to it, you see. It's basically, we're Ephesians. We're Artemis people. And they sense a threat to the way things are. And they respond with fury and by force in numbers. The crowd swells in the town centre. The ruins of Ephesus are still there today. We can see the Arcadian Way that leads from the ocean to the town theatre. The theatre, there's ruins there. It fits more than 20,000 people. Ancient stadium. So this is some crowd that's gathered. And they drag in Paul's companions as they go, Gaius and Aristarchus. Paul himself wants to go in amongst the chaos, but it's too volatile. His friends won't let him. They're afraid he'll be torn limb from limb. Now, you would think with such a strong reaction, there would be a good, clear argument. Verse 32 is revealing. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Most of the people didn't even know why they were there. This is what happens when identity and money and belief collide. A crowd forms, emotion spreads, and suddenly no one's thinking clearly anymore. They're just shouting with everyone else. 2 hours. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. Until their throats are hoarse. Well, in the middle of all that noise, 2 voices stand out in the chaos. 2 voices, voices of reason. 2 voices that both want to say, stop and think. Surprisingly, the first one isn't Christian, the first hero in our passage. It isn't Paul, our Christian hero. See who the first hero is? It's the city clerk, a local administrator, maybe the mayor of the council. The Bible is honest at this point. It's the city clerk who speaks up. He's reasoned from the outside. He's not Christian. He's not defending the gospel, but he can see the madness. Everything's spiraled. There's shouting, confusion. Most people don't even know why they're there. And he steps in and he says, look at the facts, the undeniable facts. You ought to calm down and not do anything rash. He speaks of Artemis and her great reputation in the city. That's established, he says. We know this. Things not going to change quickly. In a sense, he's saying Artemis ought to be big enough to defend herself. And then again, he says, look at the facts. What have these Christians actually done? They haven't been robbing temples. They haven't been stirring up trouble that they're being accused of. And his conclusion, there are reasonable and rational ways of dealing with these disagreements, these disturbances. We have courts, we have judges, he says. And so in the end, verse 40, he says, for this commotion, there is no reason. The external observer, the city clerk, effectively puts the 2 ways side by side. And which way does he say is the more disturbing? You Ephesians are guilty of disturbance, of rioting. You Ephesians are responsible for this commotion. You Ephesians are not being reasonable. That's the city clerk speaking. Well, the second voice of clarity is Paul and the Christians. And his conviction from the inside. Paul wants to go into the theatre. 20,000 rioting Ephesians. He wants to go into the chaos, not for a fight. He doesn't want to join the chanting. He wants to speak. Not because he's caught up in the emotion, but because he's convinced. He knows what he believes. He knows why it's true. If he can be accused of insanity, of unreasonableness, it's wanting to go in to speak rationally to the crowd. It's because he's so clear on what people need to know. This message of Jesus. Just think of the past 2 years in Ephesus. It's in the bit just before what we read today. Paul's been in the lecture hall day by day for 2 years. Slowly, deliberately explaining, reasoning, proving what Jesus said and did. Evidence, argument. That's the Christian way. The slow burn that led to the transformation of this city. So you've got this striking contrast in Acts 19. On one hand, noise, anger, confusion. On the other hand, reason and conviction. See the lesson Luke is giving us through this story. When you have your world shaken, stop and think. You have a choice. React with the crowd or think. I want to finish briefly by speaking to those of us who are not yet Christian. It's wonderful you're here. We always have people like this thinking about what Christianity means, and you're so welcome. What we're looking at today, I think, should really be a challenge to us all. Will you be disturbed by this Jesus? You are going a certain way in your life. We all are. A way of living, a way of thinking, a way of deciding what matters. It may be religious in some form, it may not be. But today, the message of Jesus comes into your life and it says, that way is not the way. It's disturbing, isn't it? What's being presented here isn't just another option, a little tweak to improve things around the edges, a little bit of self-help for the week. It's a call to change your life in line with the true way, Jesus Christ, the true and living God. The people in Ephesus didn't reject Jesus because it made no sense. They rejected him because he threatened everything. Their income, their identity, their way of life, the whole life. And actually, I think that's really still the issue today. The question is not, is Christianity interesting or even is it convincing? Many people pretend these are the main concerns. The real question is, what will this cost me? Because if Jesus is the way, then every other way is not. Whatever it is you're basing your life on will never prove to be fulfilling. If Jesus is the only way to a right relationship with God, his call is not just add me on to your life. It's stop and turn your life around. Of course, that disturbs your life. But what if the disturbance is actually rescue? What if staying in your own way is what should really worry you? The Bible says life our way is empty. In the end, it comes to nothing. Worse, to live that way is offensive to God. To ignore the way he's shown you. He offers fullness, we choose emptiness. And it's a way that leads to chaos, confusion, and ultimately to ruin. We deserve judgment. But Jesus came offering forgiveness and life. So don't just go with the crowd. Don't just keep living the way everyone else lives. Stop and think. Consider. Calmly consider the facts. There's many ways to do that with us. We would love to do that with you. We want to help you know Jesus, know he's real and true, that he is the way. One great way we're doing that is our Investigating Christianity series, which is coming up just after Easter. This will be 4 weeks in the community centre just up the hill, investigating the claims of Jesus and the evidence. Calmly consider the facts. Ask yourself, am I willing to be disturbed if it means finding the way to God?